You're shylocking and you're making money that way, but then you start getting into other businesses.
Yeah.
So what comes next?
You know, I had a legitimate business. I had 2 automobile dealerships that I had put together. I had a leasing company. I had a couple of things going on in a legitimate sense. But the biggest scheme that I ever fell upon, I would say, or helped create, was I devised a scheme to defraud the government out of tax on every gallon of gasoline. And I ran that operation for 7 years. I brought in the Russian mob guys from Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, because they had an independent station at the time, an independent group of gas stations at the time. And we did quite well. I had, at one point in time, I had over 350 gas stations that I either owned, operated, or was delivering product to. I had 18 companies that were licensed to collect the tax on every gallon of gasoline. I had connection to get the licenses at the time. And at one point in time, I was selling 500 million gallons of gas a month, and we were taking down 30 to 40 cents a gallon. So if you do the math, it was a significant amount of money. There was times we were pulling in $10 million a week. So I ran that operation for 7 or 8 years. As a result of that, I became pretty well known because everybody wanted to get involved in the business, from not only from my own family, but from other families. So as a result, I made some very good relationships with some prominent guys in some of the other families, and you know, I was riding high. 1980, they made me a captain. My former boss, who just passed away a couple of weeks ago, appointed me as a captain because I was bringing in a lot of money for the family. So.
Okay, so you're basically charging a tax that didn't exist on gasoline?
No, we were collecting the tax rather than paying the government. We were keeping it.
Oh, so you were collecting on behalf of the government and just keeping it
and
for
we
yourself?
were just keeping it. We weren't paying it.
Okay. And you were bringing in sometimes 30 or 40 million a week?
Yeah, well, the tax on a gallon of gasoline back then was 25 to 30 cents city, state, local, depending upon where you were located, and it was 9 cents federal. So you had about 40 cents a gallon. So we were essentially selling the gas, collecting the tax, not paying the government. And we had a scheme devised to hold the government off. And normally on any license that we had about 10 months before the government would come down on that company and say, okay, where's our money? We held them off for 10 months, but every day the register's ringing because we're selling gas, we're collecting tax money. And then when they finally come down on us, we'd just close the office and we'd move on to the next company with the new license. It was kind of a daisy chain. And they couldn't figure out what we were doing.
Almost like a Ponzi scheme in a way.
In a way, but the only victim was the government.
Okay. So now you're pulling in tens of millions of dollars.
Yes.
Now you're a capo.
Yes.
How many soldiers underneath you?
I had about 15.
15 soldiers?
Yes.
And then each of those soldiers had a couple
Number of
dozen associates.
Yes.
So you're overlooking hundreds of people now.
Yes.
But the money you're bringing in is split. It's not just 30 or 40 million in your own pocket.
Correct.
You have to kick up to the underboss, kick up to the boss.
Yes.
And also distribute money to your team.
Yeah, well, we were all making money. I mean, look, you know, this scheme was mine. I mean, I created it, so I brought it to the family, and as a result, I would give them 25% of whatever I earned at that point. So they were making pretty good money. And then, of course, we're taking care of everybody that's working for you. So, but don't get me wrong, there was plenty of money to go around. So everybody was doing, we were known as a very wealthy crew, no doubt.
Okay. And you yourself were starting to buy things for yourself as well. I guess you had your own plane?
I had a jet plane. I had a helicopter. I had, you know, I built myself 8,000 square foot house with a racquetball court and you know, on 2 acres of land in Long Island. So I had a house in Florida. I had another house in Marina del Rey, California. So I mean, you know, I was accumulating wealth, but accumulating assets. But along the way, I had legitimate business also. I had a very successful Mazda dealership. I had a successful Chevrolet dealership on Long Island. I had a motion picture company, a distributing company I had bought into. I was making movies, I was distributing them, so I had a good income legally also. So I was able to cover a lot of stuff.
Okay, so that's basically how you're laundering the money, through the legitimate businesses.
I mean, look, we used tax money to make a movie at one point in time. So, you know, $2.5 million film, I was a week's pay. So, you know, it was pretty good.
So at this point, the money is coming in like crazy.
Yes.
Was there ever a notion of, okay, I have enough money to retire with right now. I could walk away from all this, maybe go to a country that doesn't have U.S. Extradition with my family, and just ride off into the sunset?
Never thought of ever leaving America. No, not in any way, shape, or form. And, you know, here was my attitude at the time. You know, I knew I was going to go down at one point in time. I mean, we all knew that.
So you knew that the whole time?
Yeah, I knew it was going to happen. I mean, even though you got to understand, I became a major target of law enforcement. I went to trial 5 times, so they were really on me. But here was my attitude. You get just as much time for stealing $1 million as you do for stealing $1 billion. What's the difference? So I may as well keep going, because if I give this up, somebody else is going to get it anyway. I'm already in a mess, so I may as well. And that's kind of the attitude I had. I did my best to try to cover myself in many ways, but you know what eventually got me was informants, people that flip.
Mm-hmm. During that time, how violent was the operation?
Violent?
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have to do many violent things. I mean, you know, they considered us to be the Robin Hoods in the gas business because we lowered the price at the pump because we weren't paying the taxes. So we were selling gas cheaper than anybody else because we were keeping the tax money. So people on the street weren't really mad at us because whatever we were stealing in taxes, we were making up in their gas tanks, so they didn't care. We didn't have to twist anybody's arm in a station to buy our gas. They wanted our gas because we were selling it cheaper. You know, I had a big terminal I bought from British Petroleum, BP, in Oceanside. I think it was about a 3 million gallon capacity. And I know one time the feds went to all the major oil companies and they said, you know, these guys are undercutting your business. But really we weren't, because we were buying barges of gasoline as they were coming over from the Middle East from the major oil companies. So we were buying more gas than anybody else was buying gas, so they didn't care. But they made believe that they did. You know, they sold me a terminal. I mean, we used to have a good time with these guys. So it was, I don't think you'll ever see another scheme like that, I'll be honest with you.